Сегодня я хочу раскрыть тему, что такое психопатия и кто такой психопат, на примере исторической личности. Вкратце я объясню сам термин психопатия. Психопатия – это врожденное психическое заболевание, расстройство личности, характеризующееся множеством ненормальных поведенческих признаков эмоциональных реакций. К ним относятся отсутствие сочувствия, вины, совести, морали, а также манипуляции, обман, наигранная артистичность, нравственное помешательство, многое другое. Люди с психопатией имеют дефицит чувств, притупленные мозговые процессы, отвечающие за позитивные реакции, и активные мозговые процессы, отвечающие за негативные реакции. У психопатов поврежденная теменная доля мозга, если рассматривать этот аспект в области нейробиологии. Один из примеров психопатии я представлю вам серийного убийцу, насильника, некрофила и психопата, подвергшего весь мир в ужас, Теда Банди.
The future American psychopath was born November 24, 1946, in the town of Burlington in Vermont. Bundy's mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, grew up in a respected family. What is why when the daughter became pregnant without being married, the couple decided to hide the shame and for a long time passed off the born boys as their own son. And only becoming older, they found out what he was raised by his grandparents. This episode seriously affected Bundy's psyche. He harbored a grudge against his mother, never forgiven a lie. In an interview, Ted Bundy respectfully described his grandfather, but told terrible stories about how he beat his wife, mocked animals, and in general, was easily angry. Living with such a person led Ted's grandmother into a mental disorder. By the end of her life, a woman was registered in a psychiatric hospital and was afraid to go out into the street, which unfortunately, there was no one to pay attention to. Bundy described his grandmother as an abandoned and timid woman who periodically underwent electric shock treatment for depression. It is not surprising what is the behavior of little Bundy. Oddities began from the moment when Julia woke up, surrounded by noise from the kitchen, and her 3-year-old Nephew stopped next to the bed, smiling broadly. Bundy was an unusually organized and prudent criminal. He used his vast knowledge of the methods by which the investigation was conducted to remain out of sight of the authorities. On his account were already 20 victims. When it became clear to law enforcement agencies what the same person was behind these killings, he used relatively silent method of killing, a tool for which cold served as ordinary household items, stunning and strangulation. He also had an amazing ability to leave at least sexual evidence at the crime scenes. No fingerprints or other irrefutable evidence was found at the crime scenes, as Bundy repeatedly mentioned when he tried to prove his innocence. Also, his curious future of appearances also caused difficulties. He looked different in different photographs. Police claimed it was useless to show his photographs to witnesses. The judge said about him, "Different facial expressions changed his appearance so much what were times when you were not sure what you were looking at the same person." Bundy knew about this ability and skillfully used it. He concealed his only special sign, a mole on his neck, behind a collar of a turtleneck and sweater. Bundy seemed handsome and charismatic to his victims, which he used to gain their trust, resorting to the help he had imagined necessary. Bundy suppressed the victim's resistance and then jammed her, recorded the handcuffs on her hands, sexually assaulted her and destroyed her at the meeting place or in a remote place. Bundy undressed the dead, and burning their clothes. According to him, the burning of clothes was not only a ritual action, he also did this in order to destroy evidence that could link him to the murder. He often returned to the scenes of his crimes to expose the bodies to acts of necrophilia or to make up and dress them. Some of the victims were found in clothing what they never had, or with vanished nails, which no one in their circle else served. He also shot many of his victims on Polaroid. When you work to do something right, he explained it to the police. You don't want to forget about it. Maniacs said what alcohol consumption was an important aspect. Ted Bundy went through several psychiatric examinations. The conclusion of the experts varied. He was unitedly diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder, but later his decision was repeatedly changed. Also did not exclude the possibility of Bundy having a split personality.
I grew up in a wonderful home with two dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. A home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives, where we regularly attended church, 2 Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home. That basically, I was a normal person. I wasn't some guy hanging out at bars or a bum. I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with them, and just tell. I mean, I was essentially a normal person. I had good friends. I led a normal life, except for this one small but very potent and very destructive segment of it that I kept very secret, very close to myself, and didn't let anybody know about it. And part of the shock and horror for my dear friends and family years ago when I was first arrested was that there was no clue. They looked at me and they looked at the all-American boy. And it happened in stages, gradually. It doesn't necessarily, not to me at least, happen overnight. My experience with, let's say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with the sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction, like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it. Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography. Those of us who have been so much influenced by violence in the media, in particular pornographic violence are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We are your sons and we are your husbands. And we grew up in regular families. And pornography can reach out and snatch a kid out of any house today. He snatched me out of my home. It snatched me out of my home 20, 30 years ago. And as diligent as my parents were, and they were diligent in protecting their children, and as good a Christian home as we had, and we had a wonderful Christian home, there is no protection against the kinds of influences that are loose in the society that tolerates